Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the League Racing TV YouTube channel for round 2 of the first season of EML Formula 1. My name is Aidan Carter, otherwise known as Car Mentalist. I'll be taking you through proceedings once again on a Wednesday evening, and joining me in the commentary box for the second race of the season is, of course, Mr. Daka230. Daka, how are you doing this evening?
Thank you very much, Aidan. Hello, I don't know, and yes, we should have another great race in store for you guys here tonight. It is, of course, the second round of Season 1 of EML Formula 1. This one, of course, being the Bahrain Grand Prix. It is a circuit that's markedly different to the opening round of the season that we had last time out in Australia. We were able to see for the first time how this brand new crop of drivers were able to fare out on track, and we're going to get a better idea as to who's going to be challenging up the front throughout the season here at the second round then for the Bahrain Grand Prix getting underway very shortly. And this will be a good indication to see who follows on from Australia, who's going to jump further up the front. The questions that we've asked in the first round, some of them will be answered here, and we're going to get a great idea of where everyone stands here at the second round. The pressure is mounting. Let's get into it, because my oh my, we should have another cracker tonight.
We really should, and obviously coming into Bahrain for the second round of the season, a remarkably different circuit to what we had at the first round of the season, which obviously took place at Melbourne. So that is going to be one thing to look out for. This track, you've got to say, is a little bit more of an indicator of where people are going to fall for the rest of the season. This track is a lot more similar to a lot of other tracks that we find on the calendar for the rest of the season. So this could be the true reading of who is the fastest in this championship for the rest of the season. Just going to run you through the drivers' standings after the first round of the season at Melbourne. And by the way, if you didn't tune into the Melbourne race, I recommend you go and do so. It was a crazy race from start to finish. There was so many things happening. It was difficult to keep up at many different points, but it was an absolutely brilliant race. And it was CTG Venom that came out on top last time out for the Mercedes team. It had a Jurassic in second place and Cometa Lars in third. Foxy Red finished in fourth place, head of M Short in fifth, TTG Vettel in sixth, head of Kriza in seventh, Scott Bugner was eighth, Andreas was ninth for the Loyotis Racing team, and Zaldema rounded off the top 10, and that is how the top 10 in the driver standings is at the moment as well, going into Bahrain. So after the first round, obviously, like I said, Melbourne's a little bit of a unique track compared to some of the tracks we've got this season, but who really stood out to you last time out was a possible championship frontrunner?
Well, obviously you have to point to all those guys on the podium, Venom, Jurassic and Lars. They were especially as well battling up the front of the field, and we're relatively far clear in those final few laps, so I think those guys are all going to have to be contenders. But also, additionally, there's some drivers further down you can't rule out. M Short, I think, had a bit of an off day last time out in Australia. He's got more potential. Amazing Hour, of course, made a couple of mistakes. Arguably had the most pace out of anyone last week, just couldn't put it together. So I think there's definitely a lot of different contenders, and as you've mentioned, this track's going to be a better indication of where everyone stands. We've got quite a different field, though, as well, for tonight. Quite a lot of drivers unable to make it tonight, so we're going to get a few reserves, our first chance of seeing these guys out on track, and what is a massive division of about 30 drivers. You're going to see the field very different every week, and so you get the idea as well as where these guys stand, because I think we have at least 7 reserves on hand today, so that's going to make things very intriguing as to where some of these debutants are able to stack up the first time we're going to see them out on track.
Yeah, definitely something to look out for. It plays obviously another dynamic that these drivers have to factor in. It is the reserve drivers we do have for this season. I'm just going to run you through actually the reserves before we get ready for the qualifying session. So taking both Haas cars today, TTG Mays and Harry are taking part today. They are both making their first appearances in this championship in the Haas cars. The second seat at Alfa Romeo is taken by Traeger. That is his first. This is his first race as well in this championship. The first seat at Alpha Tauri is being taken by our good mate TTG Honey Badger. So we'll see what he can do. Maybe he can finally break that Wednesday curse that has been following him pretty much all of his League Racing TV career, it seems. The AlphaTauri's second seat is taken up by Charlie25. The first McLaren seat is taken up by Chapelele. This is his first drive as well. And Foxy Red will be taking up the first Ferrari seat for this round as well. And Foxy Red, if you remember last time out, started towards the bottom end of the top 10, just outside the top 10, but had a great recovery thanks to a virtual safety car. But a great race in the end for Foxy Red. So as a reserve driver, he really made an impression last week with a 4th place finish. Do you think you could see him maybe doing the same again this time round?
Well, it's really a case of fortunes. We'll see if he maybe has a bit more pace to offer as well this time around. Of course, we're really going to get our indication. It could go either way, really. Of course, he did have a lot of timing on his sign last week, but in the end, he made the most of that opportunity and drove home a superb high up points finish. We'll see if he can pull off that again. But of course, there's a lot of circumstances that could work for or against him. And so that's going to be something we've got to try and keep our eyes on as we now get ourselves loaded and towards qualifying. Full grid of 20 drivers taking on this circuit. About a 85-second lap here around Bahrain. So about a medium length of track. We'll see how these guys are going to unfold around here. 15 turns as well. We'll see how these guys all stand. But a qualifying session that's pretty important actually, because one thing, well, it's maybe not a difficult track necessarily to overtake at. It's actually, I'd say, one of the easiest circuits. The reality is about racing around here is that usually you're going to see some DRS trains forming because everyone tends to be quite evenly matched around here and it's quite easy to follow. But if you're near the back of a DRS train, overtaking is going to be a bit more difficult. So it's definitely in your advantage to qualify near the front, to get in the way and just control your race at the front, because the guys behind you following in that DRS are going to find it very difficult to get back up towards you.
Yeah, it really is difficult, especially around this track, to try and stick in that DRS range that we've seen so many times before. At so many different tracks, it is just kind of a feature really of this game, is the DRS trains that happen on a majority of circuits. This track is, of course, no exception with the amount of straights we've got here. This track is relatively low downforce in terms of the rest of the circuit as well, so the possibility of DRS trains, like you say, is very, very common around here. And then in terms of strategy as well, this one is a little bit difficult on strategy. It's not the most difficult track in terms of strategy in the world to master. It's either a soft hard, you can do a medium soft around this track, you can do a soft medium if you're brave enough on the mediums towards the end of the race. It is possible, but just looking at what this race is looking like in terms of strategy, what do you think most of these guys are going to go for?
Well, it depends. The guys inside the top 10, I'm anticipating, as you mentioned, a kind of soft to hard strategy. I think that's going to be the best chance of keeping those guys up at the front. Guys outside the top 10, I think you're going to be seeing some medium starts trying to benefit from an alternate strategy. That's the beauty of it. We'll see how it all unfolds. We're getting inside the top 10. I'd say it's more beneficial here than usual. So we'll see how these guys unfold first off with Commander Lars over the line. To kick off a flying lap, let's see how the Williams driver navigates. That's Bahrain International Circuit heading into turn 1 now.
Here we go, then into turn 1, braking just before the 100-metre board. A little bit of a lock-up on that inside front right, but gets the apex nicely through turn 2. Just a little bit off the throttle, making sure you don't spin the car as you go through the kink of turn 3 and out onto the second of 3 DRS straights, then down towards turn 4. Another great overtaking opportunity if you're close enough. Coming out of turns 2 and 3, again a little bit of a lock-up, but nothing too worrisome for Cometa Lars as he heads then down into the second sector. This is where it gets a little bit more technical as we drop down the hill, down towards turn 8. Another heavy braking zone, and again another lock-up for Lars. You're going to see that a lot from these drivers at this circuit. This track is very difficult to get the braking absolutely spot on. Down through 9 and 10, one of the most difficult corners on the game to not lock up on, and Lars actually nails that perfectly through turn 10. Now down the third of the 3 DRS straights, probably the most difficult place to overtake at the end of the DRS straight on this track, turn 11, because it is such a short braking zone into the corner and such a wide exit as well. You run all the way to the right hand side, cut back towards the left for the squarest run through turn 12, don't touch the curb on the inside, and then head towards turn 13 into the final part of the lap now. Only just a couple corners to go to finish off the lap. Lars has got a little bit of traffic in front in one of the McLarens, that's Chapelele, but he moves out the way nicely. Down into the braking zone for turn 14, and then technically the last corner of turn 15, which you don't really have to worry about there, through the kink, and then a short run to the line, just a quick burst of DRS to cross the line. And Lars, the first time in qualifying, is a 24.8 from the Williams man. Third in the race last time out, had a great race at the front of the field at the moment on a 24.8, but you would imagine we're probably going to see drivers get towards the low 24s.
Yeah, I do suspect that. Young Power actually going a little bit quicker, and it's very tight there. Amazing, wow. We're just 100 behind that. So 3 drivers so far. 3 drivers on a 1:24.8, but we're seeing the lap times come flying in there. Zone was a little way off, then Creaser just jumps in front of that then in a 1:25.1 in the Racing Point. Then you're going to see the lap times coming in thick and fast in this early stage of the session. Andreas coming through. That's on the medium tyre, interestingly enough. I'm not expecting many drivers to go out there and set their ultimate lap times on mediums, but of course they're going to look to maybe get a banker lap in there first off then. I think next up over the line is going to be Harry B making a debut. Another very impressive driver in some other leagues there at EML, so we'll see if he can continue to carry that form over to this race here today then. Gearing up for turn 14, heading the apex, actually clipping the curb maybe a bit too hard, but keeps the traction through the exit of the corner, opens up the DRS into the line, Harry B, but he's a little way off there, a 125.3 to go through the early part of that session. Jirazi and behind, of course. Jirazi was fighting right up the sharp end of things as we've got more lap times coming in. M Short going into 4th place then for Williams. Of course, his qualifying was very strong last time out, but still, as the lap times continue to fly in, as it stands right now, it is still Young Power on that pole position, flying through. Neil goes up in a 4th place, and again, impressing in that Red Bull, but really good showing so far from Young Power, right to the top, and even some of the top drivers in the league unable to challenge that. Great impression from Young Power. We'll see if the Renault can keep it up.
Yeah, that is a really strong lap time from the Renault driver, and look at how close it is again in qualifying. That top 5 separated by just over 1/10 of a second. Incredibly close. It's Young Power at the front of that queue, M Short towards the back in 5th place. Both Williams inside the top 5 at the moment, continuing on what was a great qualifying for them last week at Australia. The race didn't quite pan out how they wanted it to, but they are a strong contender for the manufacturers along with Mercedes. I believe Venom, our current championship leader and last week's race winner, is on a lap, so we're going to follow him through the rest of his lap. He's the only person on a lap at the moment. Is he's running a little bit out of sync with everybody else. He runs up the hill then out of turn 11 up towards turn 12. Look for maybe a high 0.3 by the end of this sector to be competitive, and it's a 0.7. It's looking strong so far from Venom as he heads through turn 13, trying to get a little bit of a toe off for Charlie Harris. Not really going to do him much down towards turn 14 though, as he heads into the final 2 corners on the track. Really late on the brakes, a little lock up, but gets the apex nicely out of the corner. This could be provisional pole for Venom. Can he pick up where he left off last week? He crosses line, and he does. A 24.7 goes onto provisional pole by just under 1/10 of a second. A great lap from Venom once again in qualifying, and that man we were expecting maybe coming into the season for Amazing Hour to really overshadow Venom a little bit. Venom so far in this championship really has come out the gates flying.
He has indeed, and has kicked off, as you said, where he left off, and he's still only 700ths clear. There is a lot of possibilities for improvement of the others throughout the remainder of this qualifying session. There is a lot still on the table. Bit of a transition period now in qualifying. We're getting the drivers now switching out then for their second runs. We're going to see them coming through very, very soon and getting lap times kicked off. I think I was going to say, I think that was Vettel coming up to the line, but he is just starting off. He's just in the middle of the outlap. So I think Casper in the Racing Point will kick things off. Let's see what he can do then. The CPR driver coming over the line now. A DRS open and flying up then towards the break. He's over the first corner. Last week did not go his way. He's going to look for better fortunes. This week on to the brakes for the first time. And a turn 1 hooking up the apex on the inside. Then up in the third and fourth gear. Short that thing with big oversteer coming over 2. It's such a tough traction zone all the way up there. You really need to get the balance right, then you're on the brakes again. In a turn 4, you're testing your patience on getting on the throttle as you power out of it, but the first sector didn't look the cleanest, and it is actually a ways off the pace. Running wide again, going through turn 6, then holding it through turn 7, keeping it alive, and then you're onto the brakes again for that turn 8, then slight lock up of the right front tyre. You're going to see that all the way throughout then. So difficult for the drivers to nail it, especially in this downhill braking zone. You're braking while turning, but that actually was pretty nailed on by CBI Casper, continuing to push on and continue to press forward on its flying lap. Now heading into turn 11 at the end of that short DRS straight, and earlier the throttle is key, but he had to get out of it because he was running wide, scrubbing up the front tyres, and now sweeping throughout that turn 12. It's not been a great lap for Casper, not quite been able to hook up the lap as he wanted to. Now heading through turn 13 and towards turns 14 and 15. There might be some potential left in the lap to improve as he gets onto the brakes then. In a fourth gear, holds it fourth, going through the apex, but I think Casper is going to come up a bit short here on this lap. Crosses, and it's going to be 14th position on a 126.5. Now we've got some more lap times coming in though from some of the other drivers out there, and so I think Amazing Air was quite far along on a flying lap there. I think Vettel was even further along, heading now into the final 2 corners. He's a decent enough lap time going throughout the middle sector. This should put him around mid-pack. Gets a big oversteer moment coming off at 14. Holds it together down to the line. It's going to do a 125.5. Right in the mix of that midfield, just in front of his teammate, the Ferraris, 11th and 12th out there. So in the early stages of the session, we're still seeing these lap times coming flooding in. Amazing Hour now, heading up to the last corner, and he is up, he is flying on the lap. Will it be enough to jump from third to first, using third gear to rotate the car right up to the edge of the track through 15, down to the line. Amazing Hour will crush it, going to the pole position then. A 124.6 early on, as Lars out of this session going through turn 4, he must have gone off there.
I think that's actually turn 8, just before turn 8 has gone off. I think M-Shot went off in sympathy, and I think both Williams have made a mistake at very similar times, and Lars is just completely out of the session, having crashed. Coming out of turn 7, so easy to do. Traction zones are so difficult around this track. Lars has actually unfortunately left the session, so fingers crossed he can join back before the start of this race. I believe someone else has just jumped up the field. I think that might have been Andreas has just jumped up into 10th. It is in the Renault, having set his first time on a set of soft compound tyres. Got one of the Haas cars coming up towards the line. That was May setting his first time in the session. I believe we've got Kreisa coming up to the line soon. That's just, no, sorry, that is actually Casper setting his second lap on the same set of tyres, so he clearly fueled for a few more runs in that car. Charlie Harris, I think, was next across the line. No, sorry, that was Honey Badger that goes on a 25.4 into P12 in the AlphaTauri. So just waiting now for the rest of the drivers to come through and set their second times. Harry B will be next. He's 0.2 of a second up, and he goes up into P8 on a 25 flat, just behind Chapelele and just in front of Traeger. But look how close it is once again in that mid pack. It is so tight, really, from, well, you've got to say Lars at the moment currently in 4th place all the way down to Andreas in 11th, separated by just under 0.3 of a second. It's incredibly close once again, with people still setting improvements. Chapelele, I noticed, was improving. Unfortunately has just invalidated, but he was finding quite a heap of time in the middle part of the lap, so clearly there's a lot more pace in that McLaren as well.
Yeah, that middle sector alone, if he nailed the last sector, maybe well got him onto the front row, splitting those two Mercedes cars. One of them is just starting the lap then. Venom's just kicking off then. Last week's race winner is out there, but we still got some cars, I believe, further along the lap then. Looking to put some lap times in. Gerazi was also up in that middle sector, but came up short in the last sector. And going off in the belt, Andreas has not been able to finish off that lap time either. We have Traeger, he has also backed off that lap, I think, so we're seeing as well as some of the drivers maybe making errors on the second run as they try and push a little bit more out of the car. Casper in the last corner runs massively away, gets rid of Overseer, is going to dive to the pit lane. He must have a lot more potential though, as he did fuel for 2 runs out there, and so there's a little bit quiet out there on the lap at the moment. And I think Honey Badger and the 2 AlphaTauris are destroyed to the end of a lap then. And so a bit of a transition point. Actually, I think we are going to see M-Short, who had a decent enough middle sector. He's going to try and push up towards the front 2 rows of the grid now. Heading himself now, N2, turn 14, really wide entry. Just missing the curve on the inside, running it out to the outside on the exit. Powering to the line, M417 goes from 6th to 3rd for the Williams. And again, impressing in qualifying so far. The Venom's behind him is absolutely flying in the middle sector. Now, round the final corner, going for the line. This could be an emphatic pole position lap for Venoms. Comes through at 1:24.5. And Venoms again eclipsing his teammate here. He maybe didn't look the outright fastest driver last week, was managed to come through with a race win regardless, and he is looking even stronger so far this week. 24.5, a great time in the midpoint of the session. We're transitioning to the last runs now, but Venom's on pole. Can anyone stop that? He's just looked to have had that edge over the rest of the field. Can he sustain it over these last 5 minutes?
That is an incredibly strong lap time for Venom, and that's going to take a massive lap from anyone else to try and get anywhere near that. Neo was another person who was improving. He was up by nearly 0.2 of a second in the middle part of the lap, and unfortunately ran wide coming out of turn 13, so that was a possibility of maybe being on the front row gone for Neo on that run. We'll have to see if he can try and improve on his third run in qualifying. I believe Foxy Red is currently the only person. Young Power's just started lap. Foxy Red is currently on a lap at the moment, down in 18th on a 25.6, so we're looking to get a bit further up in the standings. Has his middle sector gone the way he would have wanted it to? He's 0.2 of a second up, but he's about half a second down on the best we've seen at that point in the lap through the middle part, so Foxy Red's not going to really challenge the front of the field here, but even a slight improvement could get him up to the bottom end of the top 10. Let's see what you can find in the final sector. A little bit of a lock up on the way into turn 14, runs onto the curb on the exit of 15 nicely, and then up towards the line. What is the lap time for Foxy Red? It's a 25.3, and he goes from 18th to 13th with that improvement, just behind Zaldama, who has yet to improve really from that 12th spot on the grid. So Foxy Red up to 13th. Not a bad lap from the Ferrari driver, but it's just not quite as competitive as he was last time out. Young Powers continuing to improve on his lap. He's up in the first sector only slightly, but he is up on his time. Let's see what his middle sector is looking like in the Renault, and he's now a 10th up in the middle part of the lap, finding good time. He set a great time at the start of the session, hasn't been able to improve on it since. This could be his last run in qualifying. There's only 3.5 minutes left. Young Power to the final corner. How is his line in? He takes all the road on the left hand side on the way way in, hits the apex line. See a little bit of a wobble though on the exit of the corner, and he darts for the pit lane. He decides not to finish that lap. He thinks he can go faster on another set of tyres. So Young Power, deciding against finishing that lap time, decides to come in and give himself a better opportunity at fighting for pole position, which at this point in the session is probably a smart move.
Yeah, maybe that oversteer, he was just thinking, I'm not going to get myself much higher up the grid. Just want to make sure I get that final run in when the track is at its fastest, at its finest, and when I have the best potential to push it further up the order. But now we're in a transition phase towards the last runs in the session. Everyone just gearing up then. Some of the pit lanes, some have gone out there a little bit earlier and are looking to try and find those improvements then. And I think the furthest along the lap at the moment is one of the AlphaTauris out there. No, I think that's Honey Badger on an out lap. So I think behind that we've got Casper yet again, but he's made an error in a turn 8. I just saw the background. And so I don't think he's going to be improving even on that lap. So we're going to cut to Vettel just behind in the Ferrari. Very heavy on the curb down the inside of 10, but manages to hold the traction through the exit of the corners, continuing to power on now in the Ferrari, heading into the last part of the lap, then onto the brakes again. That is going into turn 11, runs a little bit wide, then really aggressive on this one, and will just about hold it together. Now through turn 12 is easy, flat. How's the middle sector? It's quick, but it's not super quick. A 1:04 flat. As it stands right now, is a few tenths improvement, but will it be enough? Can he push a little bit more, eke a bit more out of this last sector, these last two corners? Coming up now, heading the curve then on the inside, running up to the outside, holding the traction through it now to the line. TTG Vettel crossing now, and it's going to go up to 11 with a 25 flat right in the mix. But there's still a lot more lap times to come flying again as we reach the dying point of the session. Mays will be next up then, he's 7 tenths up, but he's got an awful room for improvement if he wants to get up the field. It's not going to be enough, he remains at the bottom of the timesheets for now. As we now get into the last part of the session, Scott Bugner is out there, but he did run a little bit wide. Going to turn 11 then in the McLaren and going off in a turn 12, just clipped the curb on the inside and found now. He's lucky to keep it going, but my oh my, what a close call. Just managed to hold it together, but Scott Bugner now getting rid of the lap. He's going to have to go again then, and with less ERS, the pressure now mounting on the McLaren if he wants to get further up the grid.
Yeah, and a track like this where the soft tyres really do wear off at the start of the race, you don't want to do a lap in qualifying, your best lap and start inside the top 10 on a worn set of tyres. That can really compromise your race. Jurassic, meanwhile, on another lap, he's invalidated again. So second, last time out, second in the championship, currently 16th on the grid. He has not had a good run in qualifying. Casper has retired from the session in the pit lane earlier on. Andreas in the second Renault had improved up to 4th place with a great final sector on his lap. Honey Badger in the middle part of the lap hasn't found any time as of yet. He's not improving currently in the AlphaTauri, currently 15th on the grid, so we'll see what his final sector is like. Can he find anything in the final sector that puts him up the field just a few places on this grid? And oh, he's really wide though at turn 14. That is his lap over with, and he's not really going to have any ERS left to complete another run. He's going to dart for the pit lane. I think only 15th on the grid on debut then for Honey Badger. He can't get any higher than that. Charlie Harris's teammate starts a lap behind him on the road. One of the Renaults, I think, has just gone off at the last corner. I think that's actually Andreas. It's actually Chapelele has spun in the second McLaren on his lap coming out of turn 8. So he was up, I think, in the first sector and has spun the car. So that is him not going to be improving on 8th place on the grid at the moment. We've got more people coming up towards the line. I think we've got one of the Mercedes on a lap. Can't see who that is. That's Amazing Hour. And he's only slightly up in the middle part of the lap. He's not really found any time so far. So it doesn't look like, unless it's an amazing final sector from Amazing Hour, he's not going to be able to knock his teammate off of pole, it seems, as he comes towards the final corner then, turn 14, and then out of turn 15. How is the final sector? He was right over the curb on the left-hand side of the track, just gets away with it. Up to the line, is it enough? He doesn't find enough time. He gets into the 0.5s, but it's not enough to challenge his teammate who's one-upped him so far in qualifying. Traeger's on a lap, currently 10th. As you know, he's invalidated. Sorry, that was Jurassic, I think, coming really maybe to do a second lap on the same set of tyres. Has he found any time? He comes across the line and it's only 13th, sorry, for the Alfa Romeo driver. That is such a shame. That is not going to be where he wants to start this Grand Prix. We've got one of the Williams to the line. That's M Short, and he goes up onto the front row just ahead of Amazing Hour. Good final run from him. We've now got the Red Bulls coming to the line. Neo crosses the line, improves ever so slightly, but doesn't gain any places on track, as actually Venom improves on a 24.3. What a time from Venom, just when he thought his pole position couldn't get any more convincing. He goes and knocks it out of the park. He's 2/10 clear of the rest of the field. The only other people on laps at the moment are Kriza and B Traeger, and Kriza I don't think is anywhere near getting to it. He's not improving. Currently 13th on the grid, stays 13th, and Traeger has invalidated. So that is it for qualifying. Qualifying is over, and Venom, a storming qualifying session from start to finish, never really looked in doubt that he was going to be on pole position.
That is emphatic from the Australian race winner. My oh my, he's 2/10 clear in an otherwise very tight grid. That is a huge lap for Venoms, and we'll see what he can do. Again, M Short is right there at the front of the grid. Does he have a better race? Does he have better race pace last time than he did last time out? It wasn't just a Williams and Mercedes show this time. The two Renaults very strong out there. Young Power improving late. As did Andreas, those guys putting themselves inside the top 5. Got a big prospect in ahead of the race, but Venoms has a massive pole position. For the second week running, he's going to take some beating in the race.
He really is going to take some beating. An amazing hour last time out. He looked like he could have won at Australia, but unfortunately spun himself really out of contention. That gave the opportunity of the win to Venoms, and Venoms this time around looks to have the one-up on Amazing Hour, who isn't able to get on the front row. It's M Short on the front row in the Williams this time around. Let's see if he can sustain the pace in qualifying in the race. That was his problem last week, is that he had a strong qualifying, but just couldn't keep up with the drivers around him in the race conditions. He just didn't quite have the same race pace. So here's the full qualifying grid for you. Then it's Venoms on pole ahead of M Short and Amazing Hour. Young Power and Andreas, a Renault 4 and 5 on the grid, good for them. Ahead of Lars in 6th. He holds on to 6th despite retiring midway through the session. Neo in 7th ahead of Harry in 8th. Chapalele 9th, and Zaudema rounds off the top 10. Then it's Traeger, the first person outside the top 10, in 11th place. Vettel, Kriza, Girassi, Foxy Red, Honey Badger, Charlie Harris, Scott Bugner, CPI Casper, and Mays round off the 20 drivers that took part in qualifying. Really close qualifying actually in the end. I think it was the top 16 was separated by less than a second. Really close qualifying around a track that is pretty difficult to manage. So that is hats off to the drivers for being that close in the field. But once again, it is Venoms at the front of the field.
Let's see if he can hold on to it, though. You sense that he's going to have quite a lot of pressure from behind, regardless of how strong that qualifying position was. And it is a relatively, I'd say, medium running into the first corner. But yeah, there's certainly some potential for the positions to get swapped around. So, and particularly as well going throughout these first few corners, at turns 1 up to 4, the first sector, plenty of opportunities for positions to swap. So the start is going to be so important. Those first few corners will be adamant as to how the race is going to unfold. So keep an eye out all the way throughout the field through there. Can be a bit messy down there sometimes. It tightens up, especially going through turn 2. And so watch out for that. The drivers as well going to have to take care for each other. But yeah, Venoms, what can you say? He looked uncomfortable at times last week, was able to pull through with a victory against all odds, really. Now he has a much better chance, looks much more confident out there. Can he convert it, though? You suspect his teammate M Short, the 2 Renaults, even Lars. I don't think he's in the session, though. But those guys are all going to be threatening at a track where racing is so promising. It should be absolutely just impossible to predict almost. I can't wait to see how it gets on the way. Venom's on pole, but you said he's going to have a tough time holding on to it for the second week running.
Yeah, we definitely saw in Australia that it was difficult for a lot of drivers that were in the attacking mode to actually really get any overtakes done. It was very difficult to find a way through unless the driver in front made a mistake or they were on completely different strategies. That was the only real time we saw some proper racing and overtaking 4 positions in Australia. This time around it is much different. Overtaking is a lot easier around this track, and it all depends on how aggressive these guys are feeling, especially in that DRS train. Do they just want to sit in the DRS train and try and gain as much speed, or do they want to try and make places as early as they can? That is how this race is going to play out. Just looking at the drivers outside of the top 10 then. Traeger in 11th, interestingly, starting on the hard compound tyres. So he's gone the complete opposite strategy to everyone else, apart from Girassi, his teammate, who is also on the hard compound tyres, and Honey Badger as well on the hard compound tyres. Vettel, Kriza, Foxy Red, Charlie Harris, Scott Buckner and CPI Casper are all on the medium tyres, and Mays last on the grid on the soft. So looking to try and make some places maybe a little bit earlier on, and then get out of the queue with cars earlier on, pit a little bit earlier, get himself into some free air. So that will be interesting to see how Mays can get up through the field. But Traeger really has got to be maybe the one to look out for, as well as Vettel. Alternate strategies, but Traeger on the hards, he's really going to struggle in the early phase of this race.
It seems like a rather odd strategy, but let's see if he can try and make something of it then in the Alfa Romeo. Hard tyres on, he's going to really struggle in these early laps, as you said, especially getting them in the temperature window. But if he can do that, he could be in for maybe charging through at the end of the race. Soft tyres going on for the end, I presume. and then he can use those to good effect in the back half of the race. Then the medium runner is going to be interesting. Maybe a medium soft strategy, but possibly even a medium hard. We'll see what they run for. But Venom's now coming to the line. M short alongside him. But the first few corners, so unpredictable at Bahrain, it's going to be a real shot to see where these guys all arrange themselves. Venom, can he hold on to the lead? If he can do that for the first few corners, he's in the hot seat to win yet again.
Yeah, you've got to say he has looked incredibly strong in qualifying. It'll be hard to bet against him for a possible race victory here, but you never know how this is going to pan out. We saw last week that some drivers had incredible starts in the race and it really helped them out later on in proceedings, so we'll see if the same thing happens again. Unfortunately, Lars hasn't been able to rejoin the lobby, so he will not be taking part in this race, as it seems 6th on the grid, 3rd in the standings, doesn't seem to be taking part in this race, unfortunately, which is a shame to see. But that just gives the drivers the opportunity, but the drivers behind the opportunity to now get in the thick of the action for the top 5. But here we go then for the first lap of the race. 29 laps ahead of us. Here come the lights then ahead of the drivers. Is it going to be Venom or M Short who leads into turn 1? Lights are out and away they go, and it looks a fairly even start at the front of the field. Actually, I think Young Power's the one that's had a really good start from the second row of the grid. Already 3 wide into turn 1. M Short's being squeezed in the middle of the track, as actually Amazing Hours losing out as well to Andreas. Both Renaults with great starts to this race. Andreas can't quite get around the outside of Amazing Hour, and now is under pressure from Chapelele, who's had a great start in the McLaren, already up a couple of places now. Make that 3 places, I think, in the opening few corners that Chapelele has gained. He goes around the outside of Andreas at turn 4, pulls the move off, is into the top 5. Andreas sticking his nose still down the inside though, and Chapelele very kindly leaving the door open and letting the Renault man back through. So Chapelele back down into 6th and is now under pressure from Neo. Zaldimer and Harry are running side by side. Zaldimer just losing the rear of the car. That allows Harry to hold on to P8 for the time being. Traeger up into 10th on the hard compound tyres. He has had a great start. Vettel, by contrast, the lead person on the mediums, has dropped to the back. He's clearly had some sort of incident in this opening lap of this race. Cruiser then up into 11th as far as AO's car drops down through the field. Venom just about held on to the lead of the race going into turn 1, but it was all about the Renaults at the start, and Young Power, what a start to the race for him.
He came flying out of that second row berth and straight up challenging M Short, challenging Amazing Hour, and besting both of them, and now in the hot seat to try and chase down Venom to the race lead. We saw Young Power, unable to get a great last run. We saw the potential he had early in the qualifying session. Now he's realising that in the race. Great start to proceedings here today. It's all kicking off at the back of the field, though. They all swamp Lars' AI car predictably. And that opening lap then is now they come over the line. Second lap is now underway. And up at the front then, the lead is still with Venom's then again for the second week running into the penalty. You mentioned Vettel's bad start. He has decided to get off of those tires. He's had enough of that now. He's going to maybe put some hards on, yes, and try and stretch as far into the race as he possibly can. Battling all the way throughout the fields it stands then, but the lead still with Venoms. They're all sailing into the rhythm of the race then, and it is the Renault of Young Power that's really applying that pressure. Venoms up front, already stretching a little bit then, so the Mercedes looks so powerful. The question is though, can he get out that DRS before it's activated? Otherwise, he's going to have an awful long route ahead of him. This lap may be one of the most important in the early part of this race. If Venom can break away, he is free at the front, but if he can't, he's in big trouble. Young Power can stick with him, but it already seems the Mercedes is breaking clear at the front. His pace looks phenomenal so far.
It really does. Raw speed alone, Venom is absolutely flying. Young Power just can't quite hold on. And it's not like Young Power's really holding up the drivers behind. M Short and Amazing Hour aren't climbing all over the back of Young Power. In fact, if anything, M Short is maybe holding up Amazing Hour just a little bit here. M Short under a bit of pressure from the Mercedes man in behind him. Andreas not far back but there in the second Renault either, so it's all starting to queue up a little bit now as we come up to the line. The timing should sort themselves out as they cross the line, so we'll wait and see what the gap is. I think Andreas is still just within that 1 second window as a 28.7. It's 9/10 of a second. It's crucially right on the edge, and there's obviously not going to be any DRS until they get down towards the exit of turn 10. That is going to be the first active DRS zone, I believe, for these drivers. Venom currently leading the way. Actually, no, they do get DRS, I think, down towards turn 4, and Young Power has just got DRS to Venom in front, and if anything, the gap between Young Power and Venom is closer than it is between Young Power and M Short at points. So M Short again looking to struggle maybe in these early phases of the race, a little bit further down, as you would expect. The gap has formed behind the soft runners. Traeger, who's now under pressure from Kreezer, who's going to go down the inside towards turn 5 and gets that move done through 6 and 7. Kreezer then up into the top 10, is now the lead person on that alternate strategy, but he's already over 2 seconds off the back of the soft runners, which is exactly what the medium runners did not need.
Yeah, great start for all of the top 9 then, critically getting up that gap straight away, and look at it, pull clear. They've had a nice clean start. Now they can settle into it. That DRS train forming. It's Harry B that looks to be struggling most of all to keep with it, as well as Andreas actually further up the road then. So there's a chance of a breakaway. Group of 4 in the early stages is Young Power rallying now with that DRS and chasing down Venoms. That's reality of racing right there. Trigger continuing to draw back as Rowdy inside. Foxy Red through it, turn 12 and getting through it again. The Ferrari looking much stronger in the race than in qualifying. We'll see if he can consolidate that, but now the reality of hard tires kicking in, and now the Alfa Romeo Trigger beginning to drop back into the lower mid pack as it stands. Without Creaser at the front of the train, he's got a responsibility to try and be close to the pace of the race leaders, and it's going to be difficult if the race leaders start badly. You can see further up the road there, I think that was Andreas who ran way to it through turn 1, trying to attack Amazing Hour, didn't quite come through. It's further up the road then, Scott Bugner, you can see them all battling down there, and turn 1, Foxy Red again now losing out now to Trigger on the outside, but Scott Bugner getting the pair of them and moving up now into 11 for McLaren. Great start to his race then, flying up the order as it stands. We'll see if he can keep that progress up. Now they're all settling in, but Creaser already dropping back, and if these leaders are working together and just content to set in line and let Venoms pull them along, it's going to pull them even further clear, and the alternate strategy may be completely nullified here. Venoms pace in the front, dragging these guys along. It's pulling clear. Creaser has leaked over 3 seconds to car ahead as that's Chapolili running wide in the background. It's going to get Neo a little look at the inside line. He backs out of it, but the gap opens up, and now we've got a breakaway group of 5. Chapolili's going to have to try and work to get into that. Group of 5 pulling them clear. The question is though, can Chapolili get with it? Otherwise, we're going to have 2 different races here at the front.
Yeah, that power, the DRS train already starting to pay off for these soft runners. Creaser's losing well over a second a lap at this point in the race. Really struggling. Scott Bugner right behind him now as well. Traeger just continuing to lose pace on those hard compound tyres. Jurassic stuck in 14th as well. Can't make any progress on his set of hard compound tyres. Neither can Honey Badger, currently 17th. He's dropped out of the DRS lane to the medium train in front actually. There's now Neo putting pressure on Chapelele down towards turn 1. That's an easy move for Red Bull man. Chapelele not fighting it further up. Amazing Hours going for the move on M Short in towards turn 1. Down the inside, M Short though has the better run around the outside of the corner. Young Power gets squirrely on the exit of turn 2 in front of the pair of them, and now M Short is going to go down the inside of Young Power down towards turn 4. Can he get the move done, or can Young Power swing around the outside of the corner? No, he can't. He loses the rear of the car, just about gets away with it and just holds on to 3rd ahead of Amazing Hour, but M Short then up into 2nd place. Young Power all of a sudden really starting to struggle on his tyres, and Amazing Hour with an amazingly late move down the inside of turn 8 gets that move done. Amazingly late on the brakes from him, and that is a brilliant move for the Mercedes man up into 3rd place. And Young Power, all the work that he'd done on the opening few laps to get up into 2nd place has just been undone in a few corners.
That was ruthless driving then from M Short and from Amazing Hour, charging through now. M Short in the leading position. The challenge, Venom's race leading, looks much more competitive in race trim this week than he did last time out. Further down the field we saw as well Chapelele coming under pressure from Harry B, just about managed to resist the attacks, the intentions of the Haas behind him. Zerma still being content at the back of the train and willing to set up. It's further up the road then. There's a swap between the Renault drivers. Andreas going through as Young Power let through as he made a mistake. The Renault down 3 spots in this lap then, really slipping back. The field now coming back together as well, but Young Power really struggling now and slipping back. Is he going to look to try and get through? Looks like he's content to just sit behind his teammate, but Andreas now has the responsibility of chasing down the race leaders. M Short immediately looking ever more threatening to that race leader. Venom's now under pressure. M Short and Amazing Hour with him is further down the field. We've got Chapelele and Neil dropping back, then Chapelele reclaims that set position, and Scott Bugner now and Creaser getting up in a 10th place. Scott Bugner looking like the most impressive, most emphatic early on out of these medium runners. He's up in a 10th, but they continue to lose time. Gap between Zerma and Creaser a few laps ago was 2 seconds. Now, just a few laps later, we're looking at a 4.5 second gap. These medium runners just aren't quick enough, and that's going to put them in dire straits. So chance of fighting back at the end of the race is going to be so minimised to such an extent by the pace of the race leaders. It's phenomenal stuff out there between all these guys. If they can keep it up, keep that progression and keep charging through, it's going to make them wonders at the end of the race. And then the guys in the lower half of the field, they have almost no chance of fighting back in the closing lap. laps.
No, they're really going to have to look for maybe a little bit of luck, or just the top drivers to start fighting as hard as the drivers down the back of the field are fighting. As now Charlie Harris goes down the inside of Traeger, who continues to lose places now on the hard compound tyres. Foxy Red made his way back up into 12th. Charlie Harris now up into 13th, and now the Alfa Romeos run 14th and 15th in this race. The hard compound tyres just have absolutely no pace in them at this point in the race. They're just not competitive compared to the mediums or the softs at this point. We're on to lap 6. We're coming on to lap 7 of this race, and still the soft runners are out there setting very very strong lap times. None of them considering coming into the pit lane just yet. And now we've got a battle for the lead as M-Short's going to look to the inside of Venoms towards turn 1. Decides against going for the move, but all of a sudden, in the last couple of laps, the race has come alive for M-Short. He's looking really strong. Venom's all over the road coming through turn 2. Really struggling with the rear of that car. M-Short looking much more comfortable at this point in the race. Is right up behind that Mercedes driver, but if he goes for the move and makes a mistake, Amazing Hour is right there ready to pounce as well. M-Short's got to time this if he wants to go for the move. A little bit further down, Young Power in the second Renault just dropping back from his teammate. So after a great start, it's just not working out so far for Young Power. Maybe he's gone for a bit more of an aggressive setup, but you can tell that he's burning through his tyres a lot quicker than everyone around him.
He's chewing through those tires indeed and dropping back. Then top 4 look a lot more confident at this stage in the race. And watching M-Short, a little chuck for the rear tires of Adamson. He's really struggling now to put the power down. Maybe he's running a bit more of an aggressive setup, because all of a sudden his race lead looking ever more under threat, and M-Short now is hounding him up at the front of the field. Then so the Williams really coming into his zone, and this is anyone's race as it stands. And even Scott Bogdan's beginning to catch these guys. He's a little bit quicker on the last lap, so maybe the mediums now beginning to come into play at last now in the 7th lap of this race. Are we going to see any pit stops there amongst this lead group? It's been remarkably stable up at the front of the grid, and a lock up for Venoms. He sends out an M-Short. It's at the ascendancy, but to the pit lane, Venoms looks. He dummies him, and actually it's M-Short that's going to dive in. Amazing Hour to follow him, and then Venoms look to bait to that pit lane, but now the field's broken up. 4 cars into the pit lane. M-Short, Amazing Hour, Andreas Cinema, and back now into the pit stops. Going to be hard tires going on and isolating these guys in the front. So Venom's had that race lead before, but now it's going to be even more under threat, as they're still battling then these medium runners. But further up the field, it's Chapolili now the next to attack. Young Power to the inside lane of the Renault's going to cruise through into second place now. Young Power continuing to drop back. I'm actually surprised he didn't come in, but I guess his teammate had the rate of call on that. Out of the pit lane, M-Short on the hard tires. Going to get those hard tires in the window if he can on this outlap. He may well jump Venoms, and the race lead will change hands. We'll see how it goes. Soft tires versus hard tires, but Venoms is going to need now. He was already looking like he was struggling the last few laps. He runs really wide through turn 10 as well, then locking up. He looks to be in threat. His race lead may come under threat. We'll see what he can do this last lap, but he's going to need a miracle if he wants to retain this race lead.
He really is, and Chapelele actually behind him is catching Venom at a vast rate of knots. He's so much faster in the McLaren at this point in the race. It seems the drivers a bit further down in that queue as soft runners actually held their soft tyres better than the drivers at the front, and Chapelele looking pretty strong here. Young Power just continuing to fall back, and now Neo and Harry B are right on the back of the Renault man, who is really struggling at this point in the race. Neo has a lot of ERS in his back pocket as well compared to the Renault man, but you would imagine we're going to see all of these drivers into the pit lane at the end of this lap. We'll wait and see what they do as Neo gets really squirrely on the exit of the corner, and Harry B is actually going to try and pass Neo into the pit lane, and he gets it done. So Harry B gets the position before they get into the pit, so that's worked out beautifully for the Hats driver. And the problem here for Venoms is he could get held up in his pit box as all of these drivers come into the pit lane. That's all of the soft runners in. Scott Bucknell leads the race with Creaser right behind him, and Foxy Red and Charlie have now caught these two, with Traeger in tow as well on the hard compound tyres. So it all depends on the pace of the drivers at the front, at the net front of the field on these hards. And look at that! M-Short and Amazing Hour have jumped Venom, and so has Andreas. Venom's dropped from a net race lead to 4th in 1 lap. Chapelele comes out right behind, and Zalnam has jumped quite a few drivers as well. He's jumped his teammate Harry B and Young Power, and now runs in a net P6 in this race. So pitting a lap earlier for the hard compound tyres has played beautifully into the hands of M-Short and Amazing Hour.
I think the Venoms as well, that was exaggerated by Venoms getting held up. We saw Chapelele at least 1.5 seconds back. Now it's right behind him, so Venoms definitely got held up in that pit box. Now he has to recover though, and he's lost that net race lead, which now falls into the hands of M-Short, but he's got TTG Maze now to navigate on those aging soft tires. And the Haas driver may well hold these guys back now. M-Short now with Amazing Hour threatening these two with a little break now at the front of the field. And so if their race pace is strong with these cars, they may well be able to establish themselves now comfortably up at the front of the race. We're still waiting on medium runners to pit. They'll be out for at least a few more laps. Are they going to stay out? They'll go for soft tires. Look at Maisie's all over the road out of turn 12. Now these guys are getting held back. And M Shaw and Amazing Hour need to pounce on this immediately. And up and alongside M Shaw goes in. Drawing alongside the Maze. They're out the session. So Maze actually going to get DRS these guys then. But he's disconnected, unfortunately. And very rare actually for Mason, but he's not going to play any further part in this race. Look at Amazing Hour though. He has M Short all lined up to the inside line, and I think M Short's going to allow this one. He eats this to the inside, but it's not going to be enough. Amazing Hour reclaims that position now in the net race. It is up the road there. Creaser and Scott Buck, they're battling it out there. Creaser out wide in turn 4 to McLaren. Switches underneath and they're going to go well to Will. Turn 6. Scott Buck, there is brave on the inside line. We'll get through. Can Creaser find it back though in a turn 8. Looks to the outside line. The inside is covered by the McLaren driver. If he can make the apex, he holds on to the position. He does do that then. And so Scott Buck retains the race lead out on track. But these guys battling is just costing them all strategy-wise. And it's assisting those hard runners that just came in, the soft starters of the race. So I'm not sure if battling's the best option. Creaser went for the lead, didn't quite get it. Scott Bugner holds on to it. Now he's got to try and extend, but that's helping these soft starters again get on with the front foot, and the gap these guys are going to have surely is going to be extensive, and even on fresh softs, chasing down that gap is going to be very difficult. So Amazing Hour and M Short's lead looks pretty safe for now, especially as Andreas struggling to match up them. He's got Venom, Chapelele and the rest of the train chasing him down, but Amazing Hour, M Short, look at Pierce up the front. Again, Amazing Hour is charging to the lead just as he did in Australia. Can he hang on to it though? This race win is very much still on a knife edge.
It is very much on a knife edge, like I say. It's actually Creaser's already into the pit lane. So he's only gone 2 laps longer on a set of mediums than the soft runners did. That is a very early pit stop for Creaser into the pit lane. And I think actually he might be getting a front wing change by the looks of things. So maybe that is why he's decided to come in and switch. I think he is getting a front wing change. So that is Creaser pretty much out of contention in this race. That is such a shame for the Racing Point driver, who was one of the lead people on that alternate strategy. Unfortunately, that is him pretty much out of the running, as Chapelele has now passed Venoms. For Chapelele up into 11th place on the road, Venoms drops a place. Instead of charging after Andreas, Venoms is now struggling on these hard compound tyres. Chapelele, on the same age of tyres, breezes past the Mercedes driver. And all of a sudden, seeing so strong at the start of the race and in qualifying, actually Venoms has broken his front wing. I've just noticed that. I don't know where on earth this has happened, but our early net race leader and our pole sitter looked so comfortable at the start of the race. He's now got a broken front wing, and that is just going to drop him right to the back of the field.
I think I saw him nearly run into the back, and he was right behind Andreas. You can see him running wide again, going through turn 10 and dropping back then. Side by Young Power. Now Harry B surely getting up and alongside. Disaster for the Mercedes driver. He's swimming well down the field to the inside. Harry B. Neil will follow through as well, surely on the Mercedes driver, but he has had such a horror show now in this middle stint. I think he got hit the rear end of Andreas in the turn 1 then. Not exactly sure, but that seemed to coincide with him dropping back to the field then. As now, further up the road, you got Young Power now attacking Zanderman, looking for a way through on the Red Bull driver. This race has been broken up now superbly and absolutely emphatically up the front of the race as well. Foxy Red is charging, going through the inside line of the McLaren, and Scott Bugner had to yield to the Ferrari now, leads the way, but Scott Bugner gets a great exit over turn 2 and is running up towards turn 4. He's sitting behind now, he's got no interest in going through, doesn't open the DRS, is going to sit behind as far down the road. Trigger late lunchtime, he is in a Charlie Harris, can he get it stopped and turn out the cut? The switchback is going to come through, and now Charlie Harris for the inside lane, sweeping round the outside. Trigger cutting it along me right at turn 6, gets run out of the road at turn 7. Had to yield that one. Now is his teammate Gerardi right on him then. He went for an ambitious move. Charlie Harris, I think, fairly shut the door, but you can see the difference in mentalities there. Trigger trying to go in the offensive. Scott Bugner will be thinking more about the long game, staying out there and sticking out behind Foxy Red. He's going to hold that place then and keep a hold of that as it stands. But these guys, you're seeing the different mentalities, different ways of running the race coming through then. Foxy Red now to the front of this train. We'll see what he can make of it then. We'll see if he can push through. And if these guys on the softs are going to try and charge, but the gap's going to be so big up ahead, even challenging this lead group now consisting of just 8 cars. It's well down, of course, with that mistake from Venoms. on the last lap. But now you're left with Amazing Hour, M Short. These guys are pulling clear, so Andreas' pace seemingly not enough to level these top two. Amazing Hour and M Short now looking ever dominant at the front of the race, and even M Short struggling to keep up. So all of a sudden, Amazing Hour is coming well into his own now in this Bahrain Grand Prix.
Yeah, it's really starting to work out nicely. As one Mercedes falls, the other one rises. Venom has pitted, by the way, down to 18th place on a set of medium tyres that he's got to nurse to the end of the race. 17 laps on a set of mediums. That is a tall order around this circuit. As Amazing Hour, meanwhile, down the inside of Honey Badger at turn 1. Honey Badger on those hard compound tyres, just not any confidence at the moment, and you can see that by him nearly running out of road on the exit of turn 2. Amazing Hour now puts a car between himself and M-Short, and this is the perfect opportunity now for Amazing Hour to try and break that DRS to M-Short behind. And all of a sudden, Chapelele, meanwhile, has actually got the move done on Andreas for 7th place on the road, which is a net 3rd in this race. So Chapelele in this pit stop phase has gained massively on the drivers around him. He now runs in a net 3rd. He's got both the runners behind him, Andreas and Young Power. Zaldam has dropped behind Young Power now. He is now under pressure from Harry and his teammate Neo behind. Scott Bugner pitted on that lap, came out 8.5 seconds behind with only 3 lap fresher hard compound tyres. So going for this strategy, the medium hard, would have only really worked if you had the pace to keep up with the soft runners at the front of the field. That has not been the case, so that you've got to say that the only real people that have the opportunity to maybe close in on this queue of cars later on are those that started on the hard compound tyres.
Yeah, and the drivers that are going to switch over to that soft compound at the end of the race are going to charge, but even so the gap is going to be gargantuan. Look at these race leaders begin to hone in on the cars in front now. We're going to see some overtakes, I think, down the straight. Then M Short now, as this Foxy Red's going to come in last of the medium runners, now into the pit lane. But look at Amazing Hour, he's stretching clear at the front of the grid. He's burned off all of his battery, that's the one downside, but he is flying. Now M Short looking to give chase to the inside line, and he into turn 1, it's going to cruise through him in a 4th place, and moving up then in Andreas now, looking at Chapelele, hangs back into turn 1, and is maybe looking to set up an exit on the McLaren. Chapelele, how's the exit off a turn 2? It's great, he's going to punch clear, and I think he will just about maintain that place in front of both Renos then, as now Foxy Reno manages to the pit lane side by side with Scott Bugner, runs around the outside, and Scott will maintain that 12th place just about. But again, these guys are going to go to battle, almost go to war out there. They're going to continue to fight. But now chasing down the cars in front, going to be Mark Neville. Chapelele's off! Chapelele off there, turn 7, must have clipped the curb, and he's gone well, all spearing around, and all of a sudden, after it looked like such a promising race, challenging for the podium, now he drops well back, has got his teammate now within striking distance. Chapelele going round. Don't know if there was contact or anything went round on his own, but either way, disaster. And now the group at the front continuing to scatter. Young Power moves past Andreas now into the net podium. The field at the front absolutely scattered now. Chapelele now out the race into turn 10.
Wow, he spun the car coming out of turn 10, has put the car in the barrier, so that has him completely out of proceedings from what was a possible podium. Chapelele now out of the running, completely further down the field as well. Casper also went off the road. He spun down to 16th place, so another person caught out at the very same corner on the same lap. A lot of drivers spinning and making mistakes at the midpoint of this race. It's a lot of chaos going on in the middle part of this race. Who knows where to look next in this one? I think it's going to be the battle maybe between the two Renaults here. Andreas trying to come back towards Young Power, but isn't close enough. Going in towards turn 1, just doesn't have the pace, and these guys continuing to lose pace to our 2 net race leaders. Amazing Hour, despite having no ERS, is now 2.6 seconds clear of M-Short, who can't drop Honey Badger, interestingly. He's past Honey Badger, and now Honey Badger is just glued to the back of the Williams man, so just goes to show maybe how powerful DRS is around this circuit, or that M-Short just isn't quite as confident at this point in the race on the hard compound tyres, because the AlphaTauri man is sticking with him on much older tyres. Young Power now up into a net 3rd place then, so it's a battle between the 2 Renaults and Zaldam at the moment for the final spot on the podium. Harry and Neo are right there as well, but being at the back of the queue, it's going to be very difficult for them to make a move unless the drivers in front start battling very hard or make mistakes. And further back, the gap between Neo and Scott Bugner hasn't come down in the slightest. It's still running at 8.5 seconds, so there's no real pace advantage at the moment with those that pitted a little bit later, so it's not working out for them so far. But at the front of the field so far, it's been an amazing race so far for Amazing Hour. He started off the race a little bit quiet, but in the midpoint of this race, he's come alive.
He is cruising clear. This is remarkable. After such a competitive first stint, The Australian is stabbing his authority on the race and maybe even the championship. He had a disaster last time out. Now he's looking to get back on form. We've still got some scores to be settled though, particularly in this battle for the podium, but I think it's not quite going to change hands. Young Power will hold on to the place at the front of the train then. Further back though, Harry B trying to threaten Zernema. Can't quite get close enough into the braking zone for one. Has to set it behind. Can he set up maybe an exit? It's so difficult to overtake in these circumstances. I think the Zernema will be safe and can propel his way forward into that net P5 then once these leaders are going to come in then. And so it is the two Alpha males up front then. Traeger and Shirazi running up front then with amazing hour, chasing them down and continuing to pull clear at half a second a lap, at least from M Short behind. He is cruising to the front now, can just control the race. M Short is going to have to try and push to get close up that gap. Amazing hour now, can control the race, shut it down. We're well into the second half of it now. Yes, as you mentioned, Aidan, first half of this race was immensely competitive. It looked like his teammate was the better prospect for the race. Venom's faltered in the mid stage, and it was amazing hour that came to the fore. Now over 3 seconds clear, he's firmly in control of this one, and looking to get himself back in that championship fight.
Yeah, he really is absolutely flying at this point in the race. The only real obstacle in Amazing Hour's way at the moment is the two Alpha Romeos in front of him, who are still yet to pit in this race. Remember, they started on those hard compound tyres, as did Honey Badger. They are still yet to pit. We'll wait and see when they come in. Jurassic actually has to say that, is coming into the pit lane now. I think that's a little bit too early for soft compound tyres, so maybe a set of mediums that'll be a little bit more consistent towards the end of the race. Where will Jurassic come out relative to the battle for 11th place on the road? That is what's crucial for his race. It is a set of medium compound tyres. I think he could be behind that queue of cars that are battling for 11th place. He really ideally wants to be in front of that queue so he isn't held up in his charge towards the lead pack, but he is going to get jumped by all of them as they continue to battle for that 10th place. There they go through. Jurassic's going to come out in 14th place right at the back of the queue, and as these guys continue to battle, it's all about where B Traeger can come out onto the track when he comes into the pit lane as well. If these drivers around him continue to battle, can he beat these guys out of the pit lane? It'll be close. It'll probably be right in the middle of the battle, and it's all about how fresh, what tyres he goes onto, and how fast he can be on those compound of tyres. Scott Bucket is now 9.6 seconds behind Neo, so that late pit stop from the mediums to the hard compound tyres just hasn't worked. The strategy's not paying off.
It is certainly working against these guys and forcing them back in the order. One thing to mention actually is that Young Power is catching that M Short Honey Badger battle. Still, Honey Badger is sticking with M Short. The Williams just cannot shake the AlphaTauri, who's sitting glued to his rear wing. Then up the back of the field, Casper's going off this time through turn 8, will recover the car, but dropping back then and further up the road. Creaser going to remove on Charlie Harris. Then a turn 11's going to convert that in. The AlphaTauri looks back to the outside line on the racing point, cannot draw near enough, has to sit behind for just a little bit longer. On Creaser now moves on then, and now Jurassic with these guys up in the front. B Traeger is staying out, then it's Honey Badger now into the pit lane, gets a penalty for his troubles as well. He sat in that DRS and now has got multiple penalties. I think 8 seconds now to his name. Gonna really set it back in this race. But the gap now is Casper's off again. He's just run out of grip on those tyres, I think, then end the racing point. And he's gonna have to get back to the pit lane. A disastrous race so far for Casper. But up at the front, one thing to mention is that Young Power has been gradually reeling in M Short. M Short has been ailing in these last few laps. Just hasn't been able to recapture the pace we saw on those salts earlier on. Now runs isolated in third, still has an MP2 and is still on for a great haul of points. But this train is really immense, led by Young Power, and these guys could all really immense, so we could have a major rout with P2, but Amazing Hour continuing to draw clear. Fully in control, but the battle for second may not be interesting. M Short is not out of the woods just yet.
He definitely isn't, though. All these drivers starting to work together a little bit like they did at the start of the race, as Casper has unfortunately retired in the pit lane. He won't be scoring any points for the Racing Point team. That is a shame. A bit further down the field as well, Jurassic started to work his way through that queue of drivers on the hard compound tyres. He's already passed Charlie Harris. He's trying to get moved on Creaser, but Creaser, equally on older hard compound tyres, looks faster than all of the hard runners in front of him here. So he's trying to work his way past Foxy Red and Scott Bugner up into a possible 9th place. I think at this point in the race, that is the best really Jurassic can hope for. Unless there is a late safety car in this race, it's going to be so difficult for him to gain over 10 seconds to catch the back of this queue that currently run for 4th place. That queue at the moment led by Young Power, and on that last lap, M Short stabilised the gap a little bit. It's staying at about 2.1 seconds, but Young Power has got all these drivers behind him that are able to help us. Oh, Traeger from the lead of the race has spun the car. He had the opportunity to come into the pit lane, try a different strategy, and he's spun out of contention. Has he got a puncture, or has he just spun purely on traction coming out of turn 3? I don't think he's got a puncture, but from a great opportunity at trying something different, Traeger has spun himself out of contention.
Oh, you have to really feel for it. Further down the field, Jurazi moving past Creaser. Creaser was on the offensive. Looked right on the outside of turn 1. Now he's stuck on the outside of turn 4. Through goes Jurazi, but you have to feel for B. Traeger now dropping to the back of that train. Battling now over the podium. Oh, just one mistake, setting it back dearly. So costly in this race, it's been so competitive. But again, Jurazi on the offensive to the outside of Foxy Red. That one is denied. Just about the Ferrari holds on to it, but he now drops back. Then these guys are going to reel out Bay Traeger, who's going to be right near the rear of the field now. After that error, as you said, he was in such a good position to really crunch forward on potentially a set of soft tires to close out the race. Could have moved to the front. Was now out of contention for the 8th place that he currently occupies. Now he's going to have to pit surely on this lap. Get some new tyres on. He's going to drop well behind the train. I think he's going to be too far away to fight back. Has too much ground to make up. B. Traeger was in a great position, but ultimately I think he's just throwing that all away.
That is such a shame to see. He's going to come into the pit lane at the end of this lap, probably for a set of soft compound tyres, but what could have been? He could have been 10 seconds further up the road, and he's spun himself out of contention. That is such a shame for him. We'll see how the rest of this race pans out for him a bit further down. Jurassic still trying to get the moves done on those medium compound tyres. He's got the ERS to pull it off. He's now just stuck in the middle of the queue and can't seem to find a way past Foxy Red down towards turn 1, and Creaser in behind him, really trying to get the move back done on the Alfa Romeo as they head down towards turn 1, now up towards turn 4. Can Jurassic get close enough to make the move? He's on his ERS, but he's just not close enough to the back of the Ferrari into turn 4. He has to sit there for the time being. And this battle for 8th continues on. Scott Buckler still leads this queue. He's held onto the queue quite nicely. The drivers behind him are all sticking with him though, and he just can't any of them. At this point in the race, Jurassic's got to be his biggest threat, but he just can't get through that DRS train. Traeger has come out of the pit lane, meanwhile, down with Venom in 14th place. What a shame for both of these drivers. Such great potential in these races for both of these drivers, and it's all fallen apart so quickly for them. Venom down in 15th on 7-lap-old medium tyres. He's trying to nurse to the end of the race. That is probably the best Venom can hope from this race, is a 15th place finish. He's 20 seconds ahead of Maze behind, and B. Traeger on soft compound tyres is only going to pull away from this point in the race. Back to the lead though. Amazing Hour continues to lead this race now by 4.5 seconds. Young Power, it's not a big gap, but he's started to claw that gap in ever so slightly to M Short, down to 1.7 seconds. You've got to say at this point in the race, Young Power looking pretty strong.
Let's see if he can continue to chip away at that gap then. But M Short doing a better job as Andreas now has gone out the session entirely. And further back there, Venom's going off then at turn 12. He's called that race in there, must have just gone the curve and spun it. So the Mercedes drivers race after such a brilliant, as we do have a VSC now in this race. I'm not sure how much this is going to change things though. No one's really close to enough to the pit lane to benefit, but you can see Andreas now, that AI car, driving around. Oh, you have to feel for Andreas as well. Now his race may well have come undone. His only hope is that he gets back in the session quick enough to take control of his car, but I don't think VSC is going to last for that long, which will isolate Young Power a little bit further out there in that battle. So you can see the field now, it's just two main groups in the midpoint of the race. Now Venom's at the session. He's had enough of this race. We're waiting now to get back to green. Zerna moving past Andreas' AI car, as now we get back to green flag racing, but Zerna had to left foot. Harry jumps the pair of them, so he takes advantage of an odd situation. Harry B now occupies 4th position, and Zerna dropping right back then. He's running side by side now, Neil, as they all drop back. Neil now being promoted up to 5th as well. Zerna tried to take advantage of Andreas, but I think he got an illegal overtake, had to let back through, down a momentum, and now Harry B and Neil, his teammate, cruising right through. Neil, who would look to be trailing Zerna all the way throughout the race, now gets up in the 5th, Harry up in the 4th, but this is stretched out. Even this battle now, it's all broken apart now, thanks to Andreas' disconnection. Up in the front, things have remained relatively standing. Amazing Error still well out in front. Andreas' AI now diving to the pit lane. Oh, you have to feel for the Renault that nothing he could have done. That's dramatically hindered its chances in this race, as well as further now going past him there in the pit lane. We're going to have Scott Buckler under pressure from Jurazi, who finds the gap on the inside lane. The minute gap, they almost touch as they go as the pit wall opens, but the Alfa Romeo finds the line and will get through. Can't Scott Buckler fight back though with a better race coming out of a turn to a bit of a squirreling for the rear tyres of the Alfa Romeo as now the McLaren looks to fight back. Is he going to go to the inside line? No, he backs out of it. Cannot find a way through. It's further down the road. That crazy going late, going round the exit of Charlie Harris. Can he find a long way round? No, that one is denied. That one is firmly shut. And Charlie Harris holds on to 9th place then. A few seconds adrift in this battle, but now all the trains that we saw have been broken up by the VSC has shaken things up. Harvey's 4th place under pressure. The Red Bulls are going to reapply that pressure now. Neo and Zainaba, after Zainaba in particular drop back, these guys are going to be hungry, but after a poor showing last time out in Australia, Red Bull are coming to the fore here. They're looking at a 4th and 5th finish. Can they upset Harry? But Harry as well on a debut, looking so impressive looking for P4. What a great battle we've got in our hands there as we reach the final 7 laps of the race, and that battle for 4th is anybody's race.
It is anybody's race, and the battle now for 2nd is also on in this race. It's down to 1.5 seconds. This race is now all about raw speed between M Short and Young Power. They're running at very similar ERS levels. Actually, M Short is running a little bit more ERS now. He's saved up a bit in these last few laps. Harry B now under pressure from Neo as they head towards turn 1, but Neo decides against going for the move into the corner. Harry B holds on to 4th for the time being. Further down, Jurassic then, what a great recovery from Jurassic, starting this race 14th I believe in this race, was running down in 14th only a few laps to go. Scott Buckner though back down the inside in towards turn 1, a really late move on the brakes, half-hearted move you got to say, really didn't commit to it, and Jurassic's going to hold on, but Scott Buckner's now going to get the run up towards turn 4, and on the hard compound tyres compared to barely used medium compound tyres, Scott Buckner gets back through and up into 7th place. Brilliant move for the McLaren man. Jurassic couldn't fight that and drops back down into 8th place, which is very interesting to see. Jurassic not as strong on those medium tyres, and Scott Buckner already through turn 6 and 7, putting a little bit of a gap on the Alfa Romeo. So Scott Buckner looking nice and comfortable maybe in that 7th place. Creaser and Charlie was still battling for 9th further back, and Creaser's finally got that move done on the AlphaTauri up into 9th place. Charlie Harris is now down into 10th as Honey Badger starts to catch these guys. Foxy Red spun a couple laps ago as well. He spun himself out of a top place, and Traeger has already caught these guys, which is such a shame to see after a spin earlier on in this race. Traeger could have been well up there easily in 7th place at this point.
Those soft tyres have a lot of pace underneath them now. How far can he charge it as Foxy Red, the first car on the road then? The Ferrari is not the same fortunes he had last time out there. Shirazi's though still looking to fight back at Scott Buckner. These guys may well trade places all the way to the checkered flag. Andreas now back in the session, but it's too little too late. He's not going to get a great haul of points from this Bahrain Grand Prix. Look at Shirazi, no, he's hounding Scott Buckner, looking to reclaim that 7th position. Scott Buckner though riding the Bahrain, cruising clear down the main street, but down the DRS, and the slipstream inevitably comes into play. The McLaren comes the inside lane to the outside. The Alfa Romeo's going to go braking late, running round. It's going to back out of the move and look for better fortunes on the exit, setting up a run through turn 2. Can he fade back into turn 3? But the exit for Scott Buckner is superior, and he pulls clear down the back straight towards turn 4. Will hold on to the place. Looks like these guys will just hold in line, and Creaser holding on in front of Charlie Harris. These guys still going at it though, and this fight is up further up the field. Young Power, steady charge towards M Short. Still going through. M Short holding him at bay, but that gap definitely looks a little bit smaller than it did. But running out of laps in this race, can the Renault pull an unlikely 2nd place out of this? M Short under pressure. He's driving brilliantly not to make a mistake, but Young Power reeling him in. It's an almost relentless charge. Now Andreas then retired for the race. Is that out on track, Aidan?
It is out on track, unfortunately, coming down towards turn 8. He's just retired on the circuit, which is so bizarre to see, unfortunately. That is him out of the contention then, and he's not going to score any points because of that. What a shame for Andreas, who looked at a top 5 finish in this race and is now out of this one completely. What a disaster for Andreas, who looked so strong throughout this entire race. What a shame, but we head on towards lap 25 of this race, and look at Jurassic all over the back of Scott Buckner coming down towards turn 14. Can't get a move done, and these two have been caught already by Greaser, who was so much faster in the clean air. He caught them immediately after passing Charlie, who has brought himself into play here as well. Scott Buckner just doesn't have the pace, but Jurassic's not aggressive enough. He's not using his ERS to get this move done. If he used his ERS down the straight, he would have breezed past the McLaren, but he does it against doing it, and now Scott Buckner's going to try and hold it down the inside, but there's just not enough room there to get that move done, and Jurassic gets up into 7th place. Scott Buckner's back on his ERS, trying to get past, but Jurassic finally uses, and now Creaser down the inside. Is he going to try and get 2 in 1? Too late on the brakes though when he hits the side of Jurassi's car. Creaser spins around. Someone picked up damage there. I think Scott Bugner picked up damage in all of that. I think he hit the side of Creaser's car, and that's allowed Charlie up into 8th place, and Honey Badger's now right on the back of Scott Bugner as well. Scott had such a good race up into that point, but Creaser's late move on the inside of Jurassi spun himself out of a few places and cost Scott Bugner his front wing, which is such a shame, and Scott Bugner is very unlikely to finish this race now inside the top 10.
Oh, that was just a bit too ambitious then. Creaser going for a lunge. He saw the gap. Maybe he just looked to try and consolidate that move on Scott, but he ended up just outbraking himself. And he was surprised, I think, to run to the side of Jurazi, and that caused the chain reaction. Back goes the Racing Point, back goes the McLaren, and there's Honey Badger. Hounding him into turn 13 now, and with less downforce of the car, surely he's going to be unable to hold the Dutchman back, and he moves forward, actually salvaging a decent result out of this race. We're still looking at fights further up the field, because look at this, the battle for second is finally being consolidated. Young Power has at last caught M Short, and it is game on now for P2 out on the road. They can go to war now out there on the track then. Further down the field, Honey Badger gets alongside Scott Bugner, who has nothing to defend. Through goes the AlphaTauri up in the 9th place, with the penalties costing him dearly, and he's losing out. Then Betrager is well within that range, still charging on the sauce. As we alluded to several times, what could have been Scott Bugner now getting a penalty? Second car in this race to get one for corner cutting. Now, sitting now in that 10th place, is going to drop back as well. Got several drivers within his range, but Aiden, this battle for second place is what we've been anticipating over the last few laps. Young Powers, very steady, clawing his way up onto M Short. Now the question is, can he find that way through? Just 3 laps to go, and M Short has a decent advantage, but with DRS it'll only come down, and M Short is going to have to hold on to it. It would be a brilliant drive with the pressure, but the Renault charging through. Second place hangs on the balance. Who's coming out on top here as we chase down lap 27 in this race?
And you've got to say, just based on the last 10 laps really in this race, Young Power has had the raw speed advantage over M Short. He's slowly but surely caught him, and now that he's in DRS range, we know how strong DRS is around this track. Young Power can really challenge, but the key thing is, does he go for it now, or does he wait maybe until the final lap of the race to go for a move? It's so easy if you go for a move here to be re-overtaken on the very next straight because of how DRS is laid out around this circuit. So is Young Power just going to wait for the right opportunity? He doesn't want to wait too long. If an opportunity comes, he's got to take it, because there's not enough laps left in the race to miss any opportunity that comes towards him. But he is right on the back of the Williams man now. Harry B as well further back, holding on to 4th place nicely actually after the 2 Red Bulls closed in on the back. They've not really been able to make an impression on Harry B, who's looked more comfortable on his hard compound tyres. Neo and Zadama have the advantage of DRS, but the disadvantage of just not having the same raw speed as the Haas driver. Just can't seem to keep up in the middle part of the lap, and it's costing them dearly when they come to the straights.
Yeah, the Neo actually almost dropping out of that DRS range as well, has to try and fight his way back into it. It's a round 2 though for the back there. Creaser now onto the back of Scott Bugner. These guys go in an incident, now they're going to battle again. This time though, Creaser a bit more sensible, holding back in a turn 8, then getting right on the back of the ailing McLaren, who's going to drop well down the field. Foxy Red now with both these guys, and they're now at the back of the isolated field as it stands. At the moment, we now chase down the final few laps of this race. Our fortune's going to shift to the inside lane. Creaser and Scott Bugner squeezing it right to the white line, but the Racing Point has to line into the corner. But the exit is with Scott Bugner, tries to sweep back around the outside. They're level going into turn 12 then. Round the outside, no, that one is denied. And again, we face back to the inside lane. He's not giving this up. It's absolutely on the limit racing. And now Foxy Red is with them. Gets alongside the McLaren. Is going to get through and now looking for more. He goes to the inside line, and he at turn 14 gets alongside the Racing Point. It's past the Racing Point through the apex. What a great sequence of move from Foxy Red there. Scott Bugner back alongside Grayson with DRS. Is fighting back to the floor then. He cuts in front, and now we're looking to try and follow Foxy Red through. Foxy Red holding on now in brilliant sequence of manoeuvres, getting himself up into that 11th place, then through Scott Bugner, through Creaser, now runs into 11th. That was superb for Foxy Red, now pulls to the front of the grid. Moving further up though, we're looking at this battle for second place. The amazing hour is clear. He's away and gone with just a lap and a half left, but Young Power chasing down M Short. Can he make a last gap move on the Williams? M Short's holding on. Can he do it for a lap and a half more? What a great battle these two have had across the light race. Now, this is it then. It's now Honey Badger's gone off. Honey Badger off with half a lap to go. And throwing away what was a good haul of points. All you have to feel for the AlphaTauri. Round now at turn 8. That is absolute disaster, and maybe just got the car set up on the entry to the corner, lost it. But look at this then, cutting to the battle for second place, and now it is game on this decisive. Young Power nearly into the back of M-Short now, punching off the final corner now with the penultimate time in the race, and last lap kicks off, and now the battle may commence. M-Short to the inside line, and Power right to the pit wall, set squeezed over the white line, and has found the gap on the inside line of the Williams. Through goes the Renault. What a brave move, and he's run out wide, and the M-Short sweeping back around the outside. That's DRS as well, and M-Short will hold on to the place. He squeezed, and eventually it came through. He holds on to that second place, just about. Young Power now running out of chances. He threw everything at M-Short, but it wasn't enough. M-Short holds on to it by the slimmest of margins, now second place. With 2 seconds to go, can the Williams hold on to it? What a spectacular move from Young Power, but it wasn't enough. M-Short saw it through, fall back to second, and now has to hold on to it for just half a lap more.
M-Short read that situation beautifully. He knew that Young Power was going to go deep into turn 1, just waited for the mistake to happen and went back around the outside of turn 2. Smart driving from the Williams man. Young Power's not going to be close enough down towards turn 11. It's all going to be about a move maybe into the last corner of the last lap, as Vettel says the fastest lap of the race down in 13th place. Amazing hour though, since the pit stops, has looked untouchable in that Mercedes. His teammate took pole position, looked so strong at the start of the race, and it just fell off in the pit lane. He lost time in the pits by pitting too late and then got damaged. Amazing Hour picked up where his teammate left off though, and Amazing Hour is going to get the win that he maybe deserved last time out. He didn't get it from spinning out of contention. He gets it this time around though, and M-Short is going to hold on to second place. Young Power drops off at the end in third. Harry B will get fourth in the end. Neither of the Red Bulls could challenge the Haas. They will finish in fifth and sixth, and Gerasi will hold on to seventh place in the Alfa Romeo, on the alternate strategy just didn't pay off for him in the end, but a 7th place result is still decent enough. Charlie will get 8th place on debut. Traeger on debut will get 9th, what could have been for him without a spin, and Foxy Red will round off the top 10. What another stunning race in this championship. Australia was great, Bahrain was also a great race as well, and it's Amazing Hour this time around that comes out on top here in Bahrain. He gets his first win of the season, and both Mercedes have won both of the first rounds of the championship. What a start to their campaign.
Is that ominous? But of course then, they've only had one car finish both the opening races. That's going to set them back. We saw though it was really a Mercedes Williams Renault dominated affair, but of course 3 of those drivers dropping off in the latter part of the race. TTG Vettel crosses, does get fastest lap in the end to salvage what was a fairly disastrous race in the end for the Ferrari. Mays will cross next, 14th, rounding off the race. An Amazing Hour, ever since he took the lead, was never in doubt. It was never in doubt that Venom's got pole position. It was never in doubt that Amazing Hour was going to walk away with a race victory then. Absolutely emphatic victory. And M-Short though, under absolutely incredible pressure, holds on to it. That last lap battle when he squeezed Young Power right to the pit wall. Absolutely on edge, and that's the racing we love to see. But Amazing Hour on top, and after, well, looking so strong in Australia until he went off at the midpoint of the race. He even fought back to nearly win that race, and after dominating this time out, it is ominous sides of the championship. We'll see if he can consolidate it, but that is a dominant win and a critical win to get himself back in the hunt.
Yeah, and that championship lead that his teammate Venoms had built up in the first round over Amazing Hour is all but completely wiped out after that race. So that advantage that Venoms had coming into this round is now gone. That is incredibly bizarre to think that that is how this championship is playing out. And this championship is playing out in such a way that I think going into the third round of the championship, Gerasi might be our championship leader after that 7th place finish, because everyone behind him wasn't really close enough. I think M-Short maybe might be leading the championship. Actually, my mistake. I think M-Short will be leading the championship going into the next round of the season. That is just how topsy-turvy it's been. It's been 2 Mercedes victories, but neither one of them are going to be leading the championship going into the next round of the season. Here's the full results then. Amazing Hour ahead of M-Short and Young Power on the podium. Harry B ahead of Neo and Zaldama. Then it's Gerasi, Charlie Harris, Traeger and Foxy Red rounds off the top 10. Behind that is Creaser, Scott Bugner, Vettel and Mays are your finishers. Lars lagged out the session. Honey Badger crashed late on. Andreas lagged out the session as well. Venom's crashed and had damage early on after the pit stops. Casper crashed out, and Chapelele also crashed out of this race. It was a race of attrition in the end. 6 drivers couldn't get to the end of that race. Difficult race all around. Chaos and carnage, really. An aggressive racing, but fair racing throughout. A crazy, crazy race. And it's again a Mercedes that comes out on top, but M Short could be leading the championship going into the 3rd round.
Yeah, and that does prove as well that consistency is going to be adamant. Consistency is key to saying in racing, and I think the results from these 2 races have proved this. I do agree with you. I think that M Short is going to be leading the way championship-wise. We'll see if he can convert that into future rounds. He looked, of course, much better this time out than he did last time, and that defensive 2nd place then under such pressure shows a lot of class, and he has to go in as one of the leading championship favourites. But amazing hour. Well, you can't overlook a drive like that. He backed off even at the end, still won by 3 seconds, was just completely in control of that. We'll see if he can repeat fortunes next time out. Of course, this championship could take many twists and turns. The next round of the season is going to come to you from Baku. And if you thought that Bahrain and Australia were contrasting circuits, Baku is entirely different. You could see some surprise results in there. Baku always throws up a shocker, that's for sure.
It really does, and it's always a chaotic race of unpredictability, safety cars, damage for drivers, great racing as well. It is going to be a fun race to watch. Unfortunately, we're not going to be back in the EML Formula 1 Championship this time next year because the Teams Championship is back next Wednesday, so the Premier Division commentated by Dakar himself, and then obviously I'll be commentating on the League 1 Championship in that season, in that championship as well. So that will be back next Wednesday, and we'll be back for EML Formula 1 for round 3 in 2 weeks' time in March. Who can believe it? It is March nearly already, my word. Crazy how quickly this year has gone by so far. Tune into League Racing TV though for the rest of the week as well. Divisions 2 and 3 will be taking place tomorrow for the TTML Championship, and then the Divisions 4 and 5 races will be taking place on Friday, both at 8 PM. So tune into those on League Racing TV. Division 1 is back next Tuesday for the next round of the championship. So it is going to be another great week of racing on League Racing TV. We have a week's break, but we'll be back for what is sure to be another great round of this championship. Thank you to Dakar for joining me in the commentary box once again, and thank you to everyone for watching the stream. We will see you in 2 weeks' time. Goodbye.